It's Harsanyi time. We should make like a little intro for him or something. Our buddy David Harsanyi is with us now. He is a senior writer at National Review, and he's got a piece coming out on what I was talking about earlier in the show about Cuomo's ill-deserved, undeserved victory lap. Mr. Harsanyi, great to have you back, sir.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
So Cuomo, with 35,000 deaths in his state, is creating artwork. That's right. This is a real thing, folks, for those of you who are wondering. Artwork to commemorate what a tremendous victory he has had here with all of this. Tell us what you think about all that. Wait, hold on. I'm trying to pull up the name of it. It is the New York Tough poster of success under Cuomo's leadership fighting against COVID-19. What do you think, David?
Not a fan of it because it's mythical, and it's obviously a concerted effort by his allies and himself to make it seem that his policies were successful in New York, which they most certainly were not by any standard. In fact, if you compare New York to other countries in the world, it's one of the worst. If you compare it to any state in America, it's the worst. And when you think about it more deeply, and many people have mentioned this, but Cuomo made perhaps one of the most deadly policy mistakes in the whole coronavirus crisis by sending infected people back to the nursing home. So that whole entire ridiculous pyramid poster he has is insulting to anyone who was paying attention. If it was done right, there would be 30,000 dead people at the bottom of that pyramid, frankly, and it's just disgusting that the media has basically given him a pass. It's disgusting that his poll numbers are so high, because I have to assume that most people don't know all the, things that have happened. And it's disgusting that he blames other states now for mismanaging when he is most incompetent governor in America. I don't know if I could put it more starkly than that.
Yeah, no, I mean, tell us how you really feel. I totally agree with you. I'm a little astonished. Look, New York is overwhelmingly Democrat state, as we all know. I think statewide it's like 3-1. New York City, it's like 8-1, Democrat to Republican. And yet, I don't know how anyone could be so dumb. And it's like a 70% approval rating he allegedly has in the state. Be so dumb as to think that he did a good job, but this has turned into whoever mouths the approved slogans of the lockdown movement, who's ever like, wear a mask and, social distance and listen to the science and all these things that Cuomo's saying all the time. If you just say all that stuff, you're like one of the good guys, even if you were sending COVID positive seniors into nursing homes to kill a lot of their fellow nursing home residents. That's what happened.
Was that your New York accent that you just did?
That was Cuomo. This is, you ever hear with a press conference, he goes up here, and then sometimes he brings it down here for a little bit. But then he goes back, and it's kind of slow. But you were saying, David.
That's all correct, and I think part of the problem is that you have him giving competent looking or something that projects competence in press conferences, right? So I think those press conferences almost fooled me in the beginning as well. He looked like he knew what he was doing, looked like he had control of the situation. He's got the coat on, all that stuff. And then obviously he's on, CNN every day with his brother just lobbing softballs at him. He's on the Tonight Show where they're talking about all the women who are really into him because he's so competent, et cetera. And you create this perception of competence that does not exist. And then the media, not all, I have to say, some people have gone after him, but in general, given him a pass. And I think that all, is part of it. And then partisanship is part of it as well. People want to blame Trump so they don't blame Cuomo, or whatever. But 77%, he's one of the most popular governors in America. And his state I mentioned, I think, this last week on your show, but there are more deaths in New York nursing homes than there are in the entire state of Florida, and the entire state of Texas, and I believe still entire state of Arizona, which is my.
Yeah, you would think we always hear things like, don't the results speak for themselves? This has been as you laid it out, a propaganda campaign to completely overcome and really erase the results, because there's no arguing the numbers. I mean, New York, I'm right in the middle of it. I was living here. I couldn't see family members for months, couldn't do anything, and this place was a catastrophe, an absolute catastrophe. And you know, David, I also have to wonder, and I know you're somebody who you're more open to some of the more traditional mitigation arguments working than I am. I'm not saying they're wrong. I think I'm a little more skeptical of some of than you, although I don't want to put words in your mouth. But New York had a lockdown where everyone wore a mask and the disease was raging out of control for about 90 days, right? And I never saw anybody without a mask, and everyone was on lockdown, but the disease was still spreading and spreading and spreading, including spreading in people's homes. California has been under, the Democrat mantra of mask, 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 social distance, all this stuff. And now they're rolling back, no more indoor stuff. They're just shy of a phase 1 lockdown. If the policies work, why aren't they working?
Right. Well, here's my position on this stuff. To some extent, I have to trust experts, because that's how we live in life. I get on a plane, I have to trust that the pilot's going to get me there. But more as we get deeper into this, I realize how little they know, and I'm very, very skeptical of anything they say. Not because I think that most of them have bad intent. It's just that they don't know everything we think we know. There's just we will not make sense of this for years. And I'm all with the experts until one topic, and maybe you've discussed this, is opening the schools. It is clear that the science says open the schools. The science says it, common sense says it, my empirical view of it says so. And yet now Democrats are against that as well, which just tells me they want to keep this going until November, many of them. And there's just no other way to look at what they're up to and not come to that conclusion, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I think so. And on that's for me the main thing, David. It's that there are things that experts know, and there are things experts know more than the general public. But it's important to establish and know what those are as a non-expert, because there are also things that experts either think they know or should know and do not. And what we're seeing with this virus, I think, is a lot of that. You ask them, why is it that we have this 6-foot guidance rule? What's that based on? The answer is it's a guess. There are other countries that have a 3-foot social distancing rule. Why isn't it 10 feet? How could you even enforce this? It's actually absurd, but it's just, like telling people to wash their hands a lot. If washing hands could stop this disease from being a pandemic, obviously we'd be in much better shape. It's not enough. Now, I understand all these things together, they would argue, might lower the transmission some degree, but we're still in the middle of a pandemic, one for which they can't tell us how long immunity lasts, one for which they can't tell us whether a vaccine would even be good for more than 1 year, more than one side. I mean, there's all these things they just don't know. But all you have to do if you're a Democrat is go on TV or go on social media and say, listen to the experts, as if that's some kind of panacea. But I did want to get your take also on, and this was just breaking today, so it's something new to add into our discussions, about Barry Weiss resigning and sending out a blistering letter of resignation. She's at the New York Times. Tell folks why do we care about who Barry Weiss is, and what does this tell us about what's going on with the crazy woke libs at the New York Times?
Barry Weiss is a person that maybe 5 years ago we just called a liberal, right? She's probably more on the moderate side. I don't know all her positions, but she's pro Israel, she takes a more moderate view of Israel and other issues like that. She calls out anti-Semitism, even if it's coming from certain, if it's coming from the black community, et cetera.
Farrakhan.
Yeah, Farrakhan. Unlike some other editorialists. But as we know at the New York Times, you have incredibly woke and incredibly I don't know what to call them, progressive people who complain and get people fired who they disagree with and pretend that words are violence. And she is on the liberal end of things. I mean, the liberal in the small L real sense of things. And she was basically, from what her letter says, and there's no reason to disbelieve it, considering all the other things we've seen, that she was bullied and insulted and made to feel unwelcome there and had to leave. So she wrote a letter, which I think is probably the best thing she's written. It's a fantastic letter about liberalism and about what went on there, an open discourse, and she left. I think it's an incredibly notable for people who are in journalism and writers. I think that her letter is incredibly important. I feel like it will be. It feels that way to me, and maybe it will be a turning point. I hope it will be. It also I sense that she might sue them. She's kind of intimates that she will, and I hope she does actually.
Yeah, do you think that there's? I mean, look, you've worked. I know you've worked at some large newspapers in the past. You worked at the Denver Post, and you've been at a few places in the past where I'm sure there were liberal journalists there. So, do you get? I don't. You haven't worked at the Times, if memory serves, but do you think that there's embarrassment among the employees of the newsroom who just won't come out and say it? Or do you? I know I'm asking you to kind of look in the crystal ball a little bit, but they can't. You can't really think you're a journalist and that you make your living on free speech and that what's going on right now isn't insane, right? Or am I giving? I'm talking about for the majority of the people that work in these places, or am I giving them too much credit?
I think there's probably a large contingent that are just not. I wouldn't call them cowards, but they don't want to be fired. They don't want the attention. They just want to do whatever they're doing, write their movie reviews, whatever, right? And then there's a contingent, the people we know on the editorial page and the columnists who are themselves bullies and cowards. And I think they're activists, and they think that what they're doing, like a religious fanatic does, is always okay because they're zealous about it and they believe it really deeply. These are the people who, peddle pseudo-historic 1619 projects and write race-obsessed column after column, calling anyone who disagrees with them a racist. And these people on the page, including Paul Krugman, who does similar sorts of things, are people who see no problem bullying others. Paul Krugman went out of his way recently to try to get someone at the University of Chicago fired because he said all lives matters, or I forgot what he did, some free speech crime or thought, wrong thing crime. And so that's, I think, what, it's a small segment, but it's the segment of people, the faction that run the paper. Barry Weiss said that Twitter is the real editor of the New York Times editorial page. And that's the truth. I think a mob runs the paper. Remember last year or on a number of occasions, they've changed headlines. The news side has changed headlines because the Biden campaign called or the Twitter got mad. They're just cowards. These are cowards. It started at The Atlantic with Kevin Williamson, who's my colleague now, being fired for having an opinion about something, and now we see it there.
David Harsanyi, everybody. David, keeping the fight. Stay safe. Thanks for joining us, my friend.
Thank you. Anytime.
I figured I'd share with you some of what this New York Times editor Barry Weiss puts in a resignation letter. Remember, New York Times is the grand cathedral. They probably wouldn't like to be called that, but it's the, I don't know what's the proper way of saying it. The Superdome. How about that? It's the Superdome of leftist journalism, of Democrat-aligned journalism in America. It's the most elite newspaper, even more so really than the Washington Post. And they've lost their minds over there. That's for sure. Barry Weiss, in her resignation letter, has the following. This is to Sulzberger, the guy who owns it, runs it. It is with sadness that I write to tell you I'm resigning from the New York Times. I joined the paper with gratitude and optimism 3 years ago. Blah, blah. A voice to bring other voices. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, here we go. Good stuff. Twitter is not on the masthead of the New York Times, but Twitter has become its ultimate editor. As the ethics and mores of that platform have become those of the paper itself has increasingly become a kind of performance space. Stories are chosen and told in a way to satisfy the narrowest of audiences rather than to allow a curious public to read about the world and then draw their own conclusions. I was always taught that journalists were charged with writing the first draft, a rough draft of history. Now history itself is one more ephemeral thing molded to fit the needs of a predetermined narrative. Wow. I mean, this isn't a surprise at all, right? It's just somebody from the inside, a liberal, my friends, who would disagree with you listening to this on 90% of stuff in life, or maybe 70%. She's a little less crazy than some of the others, but would disagree with you almost all the time. and was an editor at this paper, and she's resigning, and she is telling you what I tell you every day about the New York Times, and what you know about the New York Times is, in fact, entirely true. It's true. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not right-wing radio. I'm not sitting here, they're the worst. They hate him. They're terrible. I'm not doing any of that. I'm just telling you the truth. And it's amazing that this is what it's come to. The most famous newspaper, or arguably, I think pretty clearly, in the country is run by, she says, Twitter and the opinion of libs on that social media platform. I mean, Twitter has effectively destroyed the facade of journalism because you have all these people who now don't have to go through an editor, don't have any quality control over their sharing of thoughts, and they're telling us, I'm a huge leftist, I'm a Marxist, I'm a lunatic social justice warrior. Oh, I'm now just covering national politics on the front page of the New York Times, and I swear I have no bias. As if we're all morons, right? As if we don't know exactly what's going on there. A little more from her resignation letter. My own forays into wrongthink have made me the subject of constant bullying by colleagues who disagree with my views. They have called me a Nazi and a racist. I have learned to brush off comments about how I'm writing about the Jews again. Several colleagues perceived to be friendly with me were badgered by coworkers. My work and my character are openly demeaned on company-wide Slack channels where masthead editors regularly weigh in. There, some coworkers insist I need to be rooted out if this company is to be a truly inclusive one, while others post axe emojis next to my name. Wow. Still, other New York Times employees publicly smear me as a liar and a bigot on Twitter with no fear that harassing me will be met with appropriate action. They never are. There are terms for all of this: unlawful discrimination, hostile work environment, and constructive discharge. I'm no legal expert, but I know that this is wrong. Oh, yeah, sue him. Go for it, Barry. Sue the New York Times into oblivion. Go for it. I think this is fantastic. They should be sued. This is a great letter. Basically, look, it's worth reading the whole thing. I won't read it to you all on air. Producer Mark, maybe we should post it on bucksexton.com. I don't know if people would. Do you think people would like? I don't know. I'll tweet it out. But it's amazing. This is my favorite thing. Why edit something challenging to our readers or something boldly only to go through numbing process of making it ideologically kosher when we can assure ourselves of job security by publishing our 4,000th op-ed arguing that Donald Trump is a unique danger to the country and the world? It's totally true. She's telling you the truth.
It's time for roll call.
All right, roll call. Let's hit it. Remember, Facebook.com/BuckSexton. Please follow the page if you have not already. If you are on Facebook and you listen to the show every day, why aren't you part of the Freedom Hut Online? And also go to bucksexton.com for stories posted throughout the day. You can even listen to the podcast there. You can listen on Spotify. As producer Mark points out, the company that pays us has a fantastic app, iHeartRadio app, which you can listen to the podcast on that as well. Please pass the buck. Am I good here, Mark? Anything else I'm leaving off?
Bucksexton.com.
Right, bucksexton.com. Great website that we've got going on. So yeah, there we go. We got good things. Oh, and don't forget the Buck Brief. Please share that to your Facebook page. That'll be up. That's up today already. All right. Jim. Buck, love the show. Listen to it often after work at the golf course while I practice my game. I'm usually starving at this time, and my attention focus is when you talk about food. In particular, both a skillet-seared steak that you baste in herb butter and a spaghetti carbonara. Both of these sound decadent and delicious. Unable to decide which of these to have tonight, so I decided to have both. I want you to know the meal was amazing. Not surprised. The two go together perfectly and should become your signature dish. Thanks for the food tips, and keep up the good fight. Shield time, my friends. Now I'm off to a food coma. Jim, you made us. It's a power move, my friend. That's some good stuff. Making sure that you have what you need on the plate. Let's producer Mark. If I told you that tonight you were going to have a fantastic steak cut of your choice, perfectly cooked and seasoned, or a really excellent creamy spaghetti carbonara, but you could only have one, which one do you go with?
That is a tough choice, Buck.
I think so too, actually.
They're both so good.
I go steak just because I think that's my favorite thing. But
yeah, I probably go steak too. But what's on the side of the steak? Maybe a nice baked potato?
yeah, something like that. If you got, you got to have some kind of a starch, I guess. Steakhouse sides are good, but you get more variety. The thing, you go to a steakhouse for steak, maybe for the seafood. Sometimes the sides are good. Anyway, yeah, I'm making myself hungry. Even it's not even dinner time for me. I'm making myself hungry just thinking about this. But yeah, no, carbonara is my favorite. Wait, you told me your favorite pasta was ravioli?
No, I don't even remember.
Spaghetti
if
and
I said
meatballs. You were.
No, that was not my favorite. Rigatoni was producer Nick's favorite.
Oh, rigatoni was producer Nick's favorite.
I guess I'd go penne alla vodka.
Yeah, penne alla
Maybe
vodka
some
is
tortellini.
delicious. All right, now I really am getting hungry. D, Buck, my husband and I met you on July 4th, 2019 at the Trump International Hotel. Cool. We live in Mississippi. We listen to you on the radio. Today you said that there aren't enough people standing up for what is right. I'm ready. Please give us some insight on how we need to start. Should we start having peaceful protests locally and try to build from there? We are ready to stand up for America. I think that's what we will call our group. We still need some advice from you. D, I think you got, first of all, very lovely meeting you and the husband. And yes, indeed, I was on July 4th, 2019 at the Trump Hotel in D.C., so that is accurate. That is true. And as for how to get going and how to mobilize, I think that you're on the right track. I think that you've pretty much got it. Do as you were planning on doing here. Get up and running on it. Just do your thing. Local organizations, very important. With social media, there's a lot of reach and power that you can have, especially if the movement, if you are on message and people seem like they're both energized, but also think of the way that we could have such a differentiation between conservative mobilization, Republican Party, people voting for Trump, and how we would have orderly, safe, respectful protest or respectful demonstrations versus the anarchy, absurdity, and viciousness of these lib protesters who are out there. So there you go. Yeah, I think, D, that's the way to do it. And I think your instincts are spot on. I would just go for it. And say hi to the hubs for me. Shields high. Toby, Buck, I am crushed upon hearing about Jay Severin. I'm a fan from Boston, and he introduced me to conservative talk radio when he had the afternoon show. Even in liberal Boston, he was a giant. Very saddened. Yeah, Toby, I totally appreciate and understand that. Jay Severin was a real radio host, and I mean that in I think he would know that too. I mean that as a term of real respect. He was the real deal. He wasn't somebody that just was able to play the corporate game and have a lot of guests on or hang on to somebody else's coattails to get a radio show and get on stations. I mean, he's really good. He was good at radio. He was talented at that medium and was a guy who did his own thinking. And look, I know that he got into some hot water here and there for what he said, but that's because he was a guy who was pushing it along the edge, and that makes for interesting radio. And I always appreciated we weren't close or anything like that, but I could speak to him about the business, and especially it was very early for me. And he and I, there was a respect between us whenever we talked about this, because he knew right away and said that I was a real radio guy. And he recognized that and said that you're going to have a very big career if you keep doing this. And Jay was not a warm and fuzzy kind of a guy, but he, game respects game kind of a thing. And I always listened to Jay as somebody who I knew the only reason this guy had a radio show is because he was good at this. That's not true about everybody. Let's see here. James, Buck. Anyway, I also, pardon me, just to finish off with Severin, thoughts and prayers to his family. And it was said, look, we've lost I wasn't even planning on going here. We've lost Jay Severin this year from the world of media that I've operated in, someone that was a colleague of mine. We lost Doc Thompson, a terrible accident. We've lost. Those are two guys I worked with at the Blaze, and they were taken way before their time. So make every day count, folks. Make every day count. I know it's maybe trite to say, trite to hear, but still true. James, Buck, I don't know if you talked about this. Now we are being even more forced to wear a mask. At stores, if you don't, in all of New York State, you can get a $1,000 fine, and stores will get a $2,000 fine. Cops can get called on you. To me, this is unconstitutional and, in my view, illegal. With the fine, they are wasting our emergency resources to arrest maskless people. Shields High from WGY up in Albany. James, New York is going nuts, man. COVID basically is not a problem in New York anymore. This is not. I mean, there's like very few cases. No one's dying from it, really. I mean, maybe a half dozen people a day, which is sad. For every case is a tragedy, but hundreds of people are dying from cancer. Hundreds of people are dying from heart disease every single day. I mean, people die from things. That happens. And the mask mandates are only going to get more extreme. And the fights that we see. We didn't play. There was this guy who was just great. He was approached by two. I should have. Producer Mark, can we find? Well, I know it's late, but I want to use it tomorrow. We got to clean it up, though, because there's a little bit of curses. But the guy is he in a Costco? And a woman comes up to him, and she's like, "You aren't wearing a mask," and he's like, "Well, why don't you just back off? Like, I'm just, oh, look, getting up in my face." The whole, what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think we played that last week.
Did we?
Yeah, the guy who's yelling, "I'm threatened" or something like that.
No.
No.
That guy lost his
Costco's a hot
mind.
spot for this lately.
No. That guy just lost his mind on somebody who was screaming. This guy was like, "Oh, look at you, trying to get little bit of video." He's got like jean shorts on, a tucked in T-shirt, trucker hat. This guy's great. This guy and I would be buddies. He's hilarious. There's two women are videotaping him because he's in a store without a mask, and he's like, "Why don't you just mind your own business?" And they're all just like, "Yeah, I'm taking video." I'll find it. I'll send it to you. It's great. It's great. I really like this guy. He's just funny. Like, he just makes a joke out of it because they're really trying to antagonize him. And he's just like, "What are you doing?" You know what the chances are that they're antagonizing a guy who doesn't have a virus, who has nothing to spread to anybody? It's about 99.9999%. That's how insane people are now. Oh, if there's any chance at all of, somebody having, it just drives me nuts. It drives me nuts.
Interesting advertising strategy by Costco.
There you go.
They keep sending in people without masks so they get videotaped in Costco's.
I'm not sure that's necessarily the kind of
It's definitely not the truth, but
press they're looking for. No, I know what you're saying. But I get you. But yeah, this mask thing is going to be, this is going to continue on. And look, what we really need is we need to run some experiments with people wearing masks. And, we have to do this. We're going to have to run some true controlled gold standard mask experiments, and I will bet money that they will find out if and when but they're going to try not to do this, because think of what that would mean for the global health community and all the experts. We've been masking people thinking that it protects. It's one thing, it prevents you from spitting on somebody if you're up close, if a doctor is going to be examining you, you don't have their breath directly on you. So there's some just sort of general hygiene feel to it. But in terms of preventing viral spread, of respiratory droplets that spread virus, I would be fascinated to see a real study where you have, okay, let's have a bunch of people in a room for an hour with somebody who has COVID, and you have a bunch of volunteers who are in there. Everyone's wearing masks, and they're all in a room together for an hour, and like how many of them get it and how many of them don't. I mean, I don't know how you'd even construct the experiment so that it would be definitive, but get as close to it as possible. That's what I would want to see, because I just, if it was just as easy as wearing masks, we wouldn't have we wouldn't have this problem. People have been wearing masks for months. Still hundreds of thousands of cases all the time. Anyway, I wish it were as simple as just browbeat those evil Republicans into wearing masks. Dave, dude, I'm an observer on Facebook for the most part. Love seeing people's kids' pics, family vacation, etc. God forbid you try to be nice and respond to anything political. People freak out. I have no idea how you do what you do. You have much thicker skin than I do, my friend. Dave, people freak out at me all the time. The thing is, anyone who freaks out is inherently an unstable loser, and you learn to very quickly. You're like, what is wrong with people? You know, what is wrong with them? So there's that. You just got to roll with it, man. Just got to roll with it. All right, more roll call. John, listen to your Friday night show right now on podcast. Heard your response to Frank at the end. Heard you mention getting a PS4 and hopping on some Call of Duty. Man, I haven't been out of work due to COVID because I work in water distribution. However, my job has had me quarantined to home outside of work hours to ensure we don't bring it in the rest of the staff. Minus working out or binge watching movies and TV with my wife, my life has been bourbon and Call of Duty. If you do indeed get a PS4 and hop on for Call of Duty, give me a holler. We can start a Freedom Hut Shields High team. Keep up the good fight and God bless. John, this may have to happen. I kind of like this idea. We start a team Freedom Hut on Call of Duty, and I'll play. We could all talk and play Call of Duty together with whoever wants to show up and do it. That'd be Producer Mark, do you ever do Call of Duty?
I've dabbled, but not as much as some of the more extreme gamers do.
I played. My older brother and I were playing together over the weekend. We had a lot of fun, and I am getting less terrible at it. I'm sort of freakishly good at the FIFA soccer game. Like I have a lot of ability there for whatever reason. Well, because I've played it a lot in my youth, and I just understand soccer well, which I shouldn't admit because it makes me sound less American. But Call of Duty, man, people are really fast with those controls. I just got to say, they're very good. That's
why I don't play any of the shooter games often, is because I'm so bad at them in comparison to everyone else.
Yeah, I also sometimes I shouldn't admit this on the radio, but I'm the guy that someone will sneak up behind when I have a fully automatic weapon and they have a knife, and they will knife me, and then they'll squat on my corpse, and I'll hear someone screaming over their headset, "That's right, noob, that's right." I'm always like, why do you have to be so mean? You already stuck a knife in me from behind. That's what ends up happening. Mark writes, Buck, please explain on your show why a governor can declare a state of emergency and why they appear to have no limits on their power during this time period with no expiration date in sight. Why are our Republican state legislators not fighting back anywhere? Why are businesses not pooling money to sue? Why are these powers not being challenged in the courts? Why is there not a tsunami of lawsuits across the country fighting these arbitrary powers? How long can a governor maintain these emergency powers? Because to me, it seems the answer is forever. Mark, you are absolutely correct. It does seem like it's forever. It seems like it's at their whim, and there's no stopping this, and it's just absurd. It's just, I don't know. DOJ needs to start suing. We need some legal pushback on this against the states. They're out of control. So, it's nuts. Brett writes in, hope you and Mark get a laugh out of this. My gym, Crunch Fitness in Ohio, is making us wear masks when we walk in and as we walk around from equipment to equipment, a.k.a. about 5 minutes of my workout. The other hour plus of my workout, I'm allowed to spread all the germs I want. Follow the science. Yeah, man. It's just nonsense what people say. Just nonsense what's going on with a lot of these restrictions. It's counterintuitive. It's irrational. It's irrational. You don't have to be an expert to know when something's irrational. You just have to be a smart person who's not afraid of the truth and knowing the truth. Well, that's why you're here in the hut, my friends, because you know we are not afraid of it. In fact, we chase down that truth. We say, truth, I want to be friends. Be my friend, truth. Thanks for hanging out as always. Pass the buck. Speaking of friends, to some of your friends. We'll be back tomorrow, Mark and I, with a fantastic show for all of you. As always, here in the Freedom Hut, no matter what we face it together, shields high.